So it's been a while. I apologize for the absence. Had to what? Detoxify. Have spend some me time to myself or whatever, and do some thinking. This topic this evening, I did not expect to have such depth to it. The little things in life, eh? So let us begin, I suppose. Bear with me. So, yeah, this asking for. So what? Why do narcissists ask for credentials? And being asked for credentials, it appears to be a recurring pattern. And before you all get like what you're saying, like not only narcissists ask for credentials. No, non-narcissistic people may ask for credentials, but we are looking at this as to why a narcissist in particular would be asking for credentials. Because, as we should be aware by now, the narcissistic modus operandi is different to the normal person. So something as simple as asking a question like, what are your credentials, is loaded, shall we say. So if a narcissist is asking, try and use some of your empathy here to envision, put your mind in the mind of a narcissist. Why would they be asking for credentials? Well, they want to avoid accountability, responsibility, getting caught out, exposed. So it would make sense for them to ask for credentials as a way to then invalidate the points being made against them. And narcissists are prone to fallacies big time, like the straw man or the appeal to authority. And this is a lazy and quick way to negate an argument. It's like sort of, says who? Who are you to tell me, kind of thing. And so they're trying to deflect the pressure back onto the person pointing things out. And you'll notice that after this sort of interaction, the points you raised weren't really ever addressed. And so as a result, there's no closure. So that's another sort of indicator that some sort of trickery has been played on you, because there you are seeking some sort of clarification or verifying something, and you've left probably with even more question, more puzzle than you were to begin with. Which, should you return for a round two, the narcissist, well, they're hoping that you won't return, that you'll be, you would have been dragged through a headache and you'll disengage. But if you're foolish enough, shall we say, to come back with further questioning, thanks to them, I mean, it's kind of like you asked for this. Like, you should have just answered the questions in the first place, But yeah, so that's the kind of scenario you might find yourself stumbling into. So criticism not only risks the exposure, but in the grander scheme of things, it threatens their sense of control. It's not like they're going to have the decency to also be like, okay, you got me, you caught me out, right? But they might. It depends on the sort of caliber of narcissist you're dealing with. So those would be the greater and upper grade of narcissist. The lower mid-range, not so much. So ultimately, all this asking the question of what are your credentials is a way for them to avoid the accountability and to weasel out. And is a sign of them failing to cope. You might not even realize you are causing them stress, because to you, you're just asking for clarification and you're asking some questions. You're not actually trying to make this into a competition. But when you understand what is at stake for them, you'll see why they now regard you as a threat and you must be neutralized. Now, with closer inspection, and also that you'll find they don't want the responsibility, what you'll notice is that they just want the power from it. So they'll pretend or feign being willing to be responsible, but it is subtly offloaded to other people in other ways. They may use you as a scapegoat, maybe a flying monkey, coerce you into fighting on their behalf. They may use vulnerable groups that they're supposedly trying to protect, like a social justice warrior. Note the word warrior instead of something like a social justice educator. So you can see that there's a lot of aggression and confrontation built into them before any actual discussions are even taking place. This is already a battlefield, and they must secure victory before it's even begun. Which is why sometimes you might hear things like, "You've lost before you even you lose before you even started," or something like that. They may also use authorities, and when I say use, I mean abuse. They're abusing all these external bodies here, and all the people in their network within their reach serve some kind of purpose. They're not people. They are considered property. Even enemies serve a particular need for the narcissist. Those without an assigned role serve as part of the facade and build ranks. For example, the next door neighbor is not just the neighbor. They provide the air quotes credentials for community acceptance. Fundraising or get-togethers to show support are used in much the same way. Is to capitalize on someone else's misfortune and to create the appearance of being noble amongst the community. You see how selfishly drawn it is? It's not actually to help other people, although they pretend that is this is the sugar coating. So the thing is, normal people also fundraise and they bring awareness, but pay attention to the way in which the narcissist capitalizes, and that will help you to discern from normal people just trying to raise awareness. Might be a bit harder to spot, but when you are aware enough, educated enough, you'll see that there is some sort of gain in what's motivation sort of perpetuating. Now, with all these people unknowingly, for the most part, supporting the narcissist, this results in the narcissist having no substance of their own. They are essentially the emperor without any clothes on, if you know that story. They are just the appearance of a king. And this will be demonstrated with how they declare they want to be the figurehead. This is their plight, their crusade. They want the credit, they want the accolade. And this is partly why they have such an interest in credentials, because they are qualifiers to them. This is what they can, air quotes, show for. Let me just double check my avatar is showing, and everyone can hear me okay? Hope so. So good evening to anyone who's coming in. It's kind of like they're all talk and no show, even though they're trying to put on a performance. It is a show. It's a show. It's an empty. It's a facade. But anyway, so if you do have credentials, this undermines them, because because you have earned your way. You put in the work and effort, and for the most part, you're kind of legit. You're authentic. You're coming with in a genuine sort of manner. You might not have quite reached the pinnacle of recognition, but you're putting the effort, you're putting in the work, and you can demonstrate, and you've got something to show for. They, on the other hand, aren't, because it's built by this appearance, this reputation, the rapport is built by other people. The narcissist isn't going to do any work of their own. They're not legitimate in that sense. And if you don't have credentials, this lowers you down in their estimation and makes you no better than they are. Who are you to tell me if you have no credentials? But with the narcissist thinking of themselves as always superior and better than everyone else anyway, by lowering you down, in their mind, they've won. Of course, this isn't true in the real world, but this is where the narcissist tries to transport you into their fantasy, on their terms. And where you will make a mistake if you try to go tit for tat with them. Now, where this further becomes sort of compounded is that regardless if you have credentials, they will not yield, and they will reject whatever criticisms you may have, because that was the intent from the get-go. It was not an honest question to begin with. And I'll give an example here where on one occasion, when I was asked to prove myself, and I turned around and said, actually, I do have a qualification, but being from the UK, they said my qualification didn't count suddenly. So a moving of the goalpost. So you see, you're not going to win with this preloaded question. You were destined to lose, kind of thing. So my qualification didn't count because I was from the UK. However, when I looked into it, I looked it up, turned out it actually was recognized in the United States and was perfect for that particular situation. It was to do with a parental issue. So I have a qualification in a parenting sort of course, but it was legitimate. They didn't concede to it though, so still rejected. And of course, this is a form of kind of bluffing, and with their lack of foresight, mean that these attempts to nullify end up backfiring. And I've given you two examples already of that. One is that it turns out I did have a qualification, and the other one is that if you're not satisfied that your questions weren't answered the first time around, there's a chance you could come back with even more questions on top of the original ones. But they're not really thinking like that. They're just thinking, I've got a threat and I need to neutralize it and get it out of my face immediately. So this shows that narcissists have a habit of underestimating their targets and overestimating themselves. Easy to see why, because of their grandiosity. But so what tends to happen is that, the narcissist thinks this is a good tactic, and they end up blowing their own cover whenever they make this request. And in doing so, essentially it becomes an admission of guilt. They fail to realize that their approval isn't required to be called out on their behavior. You don't need their permission to be able to ask them questions. This might come as a result of their superiority, where they believe that's how they believe it should be the case, that you need to have credentials, air quote, to be able to even dare approach them, because a normal person wouldn't have a problem with this. So to avoid detection, they must defend in some capacity, either improperly with feeble excuses, or distract, deflect, or attack. And attacking is a form of defense. They might try accusing you of talking rubbish, maybe being delusional, maybe accuse you of projecting, but not explain projecting what, and maybe call you stupid. It's almost like they want you to provide evidence and to come back. You know, it's like, okay, if that's what you want. But here they will try to prevent you from being taken with any. But here they will try to prevent you being taken with any credibility. So probably like a smear campaign, some ridicule, mockery, gossip around people, so that if you were to return, you are not taken seriously. This is about disempowering you rather than addressing. This has nothing to do really with actually the line of questioning or the accountability. This is purely based on threat mitigation. And so this opens up the narcissistic toolbox of other strategies to contain danger. One might be to try and gaslight you, or to turn the conversation into a shouting match. And should that happen, well, they will ensure that they win, because they don't really care about, at that stage, they don't really care about themselves appearing out of control and shouting. They'll be justified because they've been targeted and threatened and they're a victim to your abuse. But if you start shouting at them, it's kind of like point the finger at you and insinuate that you're the one losing control, ergo you have lost. There's a one-sided battle, or double standards. It's all right for them to shout at you, to be abusive, to insult, to mockery, to ridicule you, but should you do any of that to them, suddenly now they're the victim and you're the aggressor. You might find sometimes in these sort of, it's like a dance almost, this interaction, that they'll throw something in there like to appease or to use a bit of sympathy. It kind of goes with the victimhood, as in more sort of desperate situations. But don't be fooled by them. But don't be fooled by them conceding to any of your points, because they might try and show a bit of like negotiation, or try and reach a middle ground with you to seem as if they're reasonable. But don't be fooled by this conceding. It's just part of the act. They don't believe it. They're not really going to apologize. They're not really trying to think about things from your point of view. They're thinking about your point of view so far as in how it looks on them. Remember, this is all self-absorption. That's the only reason why they might consider listening to you, is not because they care about what you have to say. They're worried about how this is going to affect them. Okay, so interestingly, you know, it does seem a little suspicious, the credentials thing, why it would be of such particular interest. It's almost like the narcissist, being the fraud that they are, don't actually have credentials that they claim to have themselves. Because as part of these patterns of behaviors, the narcissist likes to brag about how acclaimed they are and how much they've achieved, but where is it? So their request of asking your credentials could easily be a projection that they themselves do not have any credentials of their own. They wish, so they're trying to, so because they lack the credentials and substance themselves, they try and hang this over you instead, offloading their own shame and try and shame you in the process. And this includes their careers, their so-called air quotes careers, their accomplishments, their achievements, their connections, they're rubbing shoulders with celebrities or something like that. Who knows how fictitious it could be? But there's an element of this kind of, I'm better than you. I've got power and all this going for me. But it's one thing to boast about one's achievements. That's fine. It's okay. Like, try not to get too big-headed about it, but it's okay to, these are my achievements, this is my track record or whatever. But when you have nothing really to show for it, and you wonder, how can someone who is so magnificent be living such a mundane life now in comparison? It makes you wonder. You could ask, where is the proof? Now, another quirk I noticed along with this interest in credentials is the reference to IQ points or intelligence, their smarts, often describing other people as inferior or stupid. 10% of 10% as smart as they think they are, this sort of thing. It's like the narcissist is offended at the idea that people may have credentials and intelligence. Probably, again, because this is regarded as competition. You would think that you'd be pleased to meet someone with such a background and you could have respect for them, but they are offended by such a things. It is competition. And when you know the sort of the inner workings of the narcissist with their shame and ultra low self-esteem, I guess it makes them feel inadequate. So this is partly why they not just inflate, but overinflate themselves and try to make themselves seem as bigger than life itself. And why would I notice this pattern of IQ points and credentials? Because what are these things? These are recognition of prestige. And what do we know about the traits of narcissisms? They have the desire for adoration. They want to be applauded. And so they try and appear on stage everywhere you look. There is the narcissist, bigger than the world. Now there I am talking about them boasting, and unfortunately this is where I feel a little embarrassed, because this sort of point about credentials and this recurring pattern is being directed at myself. So now I'm going to have to, well, I don't have to, but excuse me, but now I'm going to have to do a bit of bragging. So what qualifies me, Billy? Why do I say the things I do? Who am I to talk on this subject? Well, in a way, the narcissist, who qualifies me? In a way, the narcissist does. You qualify me, because to place me on a sort of scale of significant threat, is already attributing some sort of value. Now, for the narcissist, because they believe if you have no credentials, then equals no real threat, nothing to worry about. But the funny thing is that even without the credentials, they are nervous enough to be asking for them. And as mentioned, they don't really care if you do have credentials. They're just trying to size you up because they also know that proof isn't really necessary. And instead, what matters is what is people's value, their value, people's value, their feelings way more than logic. And the narcissist instinctively knows this. Now, as much as people want to be logical, unfortunately, you can be, you could be as logical as you want. It's not going to ever defeat the might of someone's feelings. And so this isn't really a logical. This is why accountability is never really going to work, because at the end of the day, push comes to shove, feelings will outweigh any amount of accountability you could try to discuss. But for those who want to know, they want an idea of my level of skill, so be it, kind of thing. Well, you can just ask people who found my work helpful or insightful. If the narcissist wants to insult them while they're at it, tell them that I'm stupid, and if they support me, that they must be also stupid, and insult the entire narcissistic survivor community while they're at it, then so be it. In any case, though, like, I don't need to prove myself. I'm not here to swing my dick around. My work does that. This is where the substance comes in, which is always why it kind of catches me off guard when people ask me as a person my credentials or what I think, because I'm more focused on my content, my work, the quality of my output. And so instinctively, I kind of know that if you're attacking me, you're trying to defame my character or something, then you're looking for a straw man. And so, yeah, I don't need to prove myself. It's the narcissist who is in need of proving themselves. They're the ones that need to prove it. And as it goes, I've never claimed to be a professional psychologist, but people in the professional positions have said I have what it takes. I've been described on one occasion as having specialist knowledge, exceeding the requirements of a level 3. I have definitely contributed to the field of narcissism in particular. And also, I do know professionals who work with narcissistically abused people. So perhaps question me, and this is where, again, it backfires. So perhaps when you question me for my credentials, what you're actually doing in a way is you're inviting professionals to come and have a look. I'm sure you'd like that. And that can be arranged. Now, on my channel, we go into what some might find as boring detail, because it's in depth on narcissism. I'm sorry about that, but so much so, like my content at times is on par with some of the top dogs in the field. And so it should be, when you consider the amount of time and effort I put into carefully understanding what I study and being as accurate as I can. I seek clarity. Narcissists seek for obscurity. Hence, whenever I encounter these kind of situations and notice the lack of cooperation, I'm alerted to what I'm dealing with. My work is, for the most part, original. I'm not a copycat. I have something to show for. And I feel I've earned my place. And I'm always looking to build upon it. I did not just walk in off the street without having done, any homework. And if you're going to question me, you better make sure you do yours. Like, I don't require you to tell me your credentials. Simply just demonstrate you know your stuff, and we can meet eye to eye. And as I'm having to discuss these things, and this subject of narcissism, from what I've been observing for quite some time now, is increasing, I imagine my relevance is only going to increase with that. It's going to become more pertinent to the community and those watching as they come to understand more and more about narcissism, which puts a burden that I'm happy to accept on me to be even more sure that I know my stuff. More important, so that it's accurate and correct and isn't misguiding and is of beneficial use. So I'm not just spitting delusions out willy-nilly. This isn't just projections or something. And at the end of the day, also, it's down to you, the viewer, to make your own discernments. So, okay, so that section anyway. So I apologize for bragging. It isn't something I necessarily need to say, but to those who want to play this silly game, there you are. Jokingly, maybe you should have kept your fucking mouth shut. So, let's talk a bit more about technicalities then. So, technically, for those who don't know, you can't diagnose a personality disorder officially online. Sorry, can't be done. Even if you have the quality, the skills, and all the rest of all this good stuff, if you're simply online, you can't give an official diagnosis online. You would need to go into a therapist's office in person to get an official diagnosis. And again, perhaps this could be like, maybe this is when asked for credentials, the person asking is unintentionally self-inviting themselves for an evaluation. Because now it's like, all right, fine. You don't want to listen to us? Fine. You need to go get an evaluation done. I mean, I've had one done. It came back okay. So it's no biggie. Nothing stopping you. But until that outcome is known, for the rest of us, what else can we go on other than observations? And with these observations, it means we are looking at actions and not words. Doesn't matter what you say you are, we want to see what you're up to. If you prefer, I mean, you could, there is an alternative. It's not really an official, but if you prefer, you could put your name forward to a community of survivors from abusive relationships. They're all well too familiar with manipulations. Like, if you want, I could introduce you, but perhaps you'll say that none of them are qualified, which they're not. However, is their accumulated knowledge, countless books, the therapy sessions they've had, the experiences, the channels and things and everything else, is that all invalid? Narcissistic channels such as myself, for example, this one here, are we not allowed to talk about the subject unless we've got credentials? And as an analogy, does that mean you can't have a fitness channel unless they have credentials? So you'll find, you don't really need to have some other examples, like you don't really need to have a qualification in mechanics to be able to work on your car, right? Or even something more closer, a body language expert they can't diagnose, but they can only provide possible explanations. So you don't really need to have credentials to have an opinion and share observations. Understood? Now, just because you don't get an official diagnosis doesn't mean you're an angel and you get a free pass in life. And in any case, a diagnosis doesn't hold you to account. It helps to identify the kind of person you are, but being a narcissist, in this context of conversation, being a narcissist isn't a crime. It's what they do that's the problem. And really what is being called out. You're not being called out really for being a narcissist. It's because of all the shenanigans you're doing. So no credentials is actually required to see the damage a few traits can cause. Grandiosity is one of the traits, but it might not be the problem. Instead, maybe the manipulations are. So all that is required is the examples of behavioral patterns, the actions that is observed. That, to be honest, the people who provide the evidence is the narcissist themselves. Just give them time, give them rope, and they expose themselves. So it's not, you're not conjuring up some kind of fabrication here. You're just calling out, seeing it for what it is. Don't be angry at me, be angry at yourself. And it's for this reasoning the narcissist, or it's for this reasoning that using narcissist as a slur, as an insult, isn't really helpful. Because, well, firstly, there's many types of narcissism, and within each of those, it's the particular traits that are problematic. And it's not helpful either. One, it devalues the meaning, which is a big problem being used. It's been noted by many people that it's an overused term, because now it's like it's just a buzzword. It has no value anymore. But for those who don't really understand narcissism, it doesn't help them out understand what the problem is. But at the same time, I get it. It's kind of like short form. It's a short form way of having to explain what constitutes the name being given. To sit here all day and explain everything when you can simply say, "Oh, they're just a narcissist." Yeah, I can see why it's done. But this is why you need to be able to back it up if prompted. And so that's the sort of technicality side of diagnosis. It's not really, or having the credentials to diagnose. It doesn't really remove the arguments being made. And you can see how like this long conversation already is, you see how like we're not even getting to the bread and butter of the situation. Really what they should be asking for, and this is another thing that will catch out someone who's been aloof, who's trying to evade accountability, because what they should really be asking for, instead of asking for your credentials, they should be asking, what is the evidence? But if you're trying to avoid the evidence being discovered, or perhaps there's a lack of it, then what do? Then you'd ask for credentials. Which regarding the latter part, where there's a lack of evidence, which is why when you go to a therapist, for example, you don't ask them for the evidence because it's unavailable to you. And so you would ask a therapist, what are their credentials? And those sort of situations is where it's appropriate to be asking for such a thing, because there is a lack of evidence. So I hope we understand that point there, because really, don't be asking me for credentials. You should be asking me what my evidence is, provided you have nothing to hide, obviously. If you're trying to hide the evidence, then you're not going to ask for the evidence. You're going to ask me for credentials and try and evade that way. Okay, now we're close to concluding, but I'll just add this point here about sorry, but not sorry. Okay. Now I'm a kind of person who wants to make sense, so I observe. I actually have NI as my top cognitive function. It's all about patterns and observations. That's just how it is, right? I observe. And I know it's not nice to examine people. You know, it's uncomfortable. It's intrusive. It's not something I take pleasure in doing. But at the same time, all my life, I've been wondering why people did the things that they do and thought the problem was me. So when presented with enigmas, things that don't make sense, I can't help but be curious. Now, if multiple people think I'm talking about them, it's because they share a common behavior. And they are so self-absorbed, they believe it's targeted solely at them. Now, considering I discussed narcissism, that union they share in their behavior is linked to narcissism. I study behaviors for the most part, you know, and here to really bring awareness to help those understand what they're dealing with. I mean, you guys, you want to be red-pilled, right? You want the truth, right? You don't like being manipulated, right? I certainly don't. And so this is why I have this channel, to share this information so that one, you can spot manipulation, because you know it's mostly covert, it's nuanced, you know, it's difficult to sort of understand, and to recover from it. But in any case, to those who are sort of like called out, who I've like engaged with in such a way, tough tits, you know, not my problem. Don't like it, then don't be doing it. Pretty simple. You know, you want to say I'm being abusive, then show me how. You know, I've been called so many different names all across the spectrum, quite literally from angel to demon. You know, and all the negative ones seem to have a bit of pattern to them. It's like, geez, I wonder what kind of people say this about me. You know. So you could think of me a little bit as like a smoke detector. You know, normal, healthy people don't trigger my alarm. But if you're doing something shady, something that doesn't quite add up, then you're going to perk my curiosity. You know, not only doing shady things, like I can tolerate to some extent people doing shady stuff. It's when they start messing with people. So as long as you're honest, upfront, and so on, you know, we won't have a problem here. And don't get irate with me about it. You only have yourself to blame. So as we conclude, you know, I apologize to those who thought asking for credentials shouldn't be a big deal. And normally you would be correct under normal circumstances. But with this context of narcissism being present, it's a glaring red flag. And as of late, there have been several big red flags that simply cannot be swept under the rug. And when you put them together, indeed, it does point to narcissism taking place. And this becomes a failure point for normal people, the targets of narcissists, because unfortunately, you don't assume you're going to be dealing with such people. So you believe you're dealing with someone who is normal, they're upstanding, they're moral, they're decent. And so the average person is totally unaware that they are being played, and they struggle to get to grips with the amount of material the narcissist packs into their machinations. You see how much we're unpacking here just from this simple question. So I wouldn't be surprised if you might be overwhelmed from what you're hearing. No fault of your own here. This is where we need to increase our understanding and our education. So on the whole, normal people aren't looking for ways that they are being manipulated, and so they don't detect when it happens. And the thing is, narcissists take advantage of this, and you were tested long ago. Your awareness to what's been happening was tested way before. And this is why the narcissist realizes, right, they've managed to pull the wool over your eyes. They've given you a few warning signs. You ignored them. Okay. They get to work with recruiting you into their caretaking team. It sounds nice, but really, I mean, it basically it's another way of saying slavery. They managed to get the shackles on you, and now you're in their dungeon. Part of their harem of supplies. So, so this lack of awareness, you've been taken advantage of. You're not even aware of what to look out for. So no wonder it happens. So don't blame yourself for this. Rather, learn that it's important to have diligence, because the narcissist at every moment is scheming something, and nothing is at face value. And that's because what you see is the mask. Everything, every word is loaded with a resemblance of truth, but really it is it's double speak, it's double talk. It's things like save the planet equals destroy the planet, save the children equals let's use and abuse the children. It's this kind of this is where the clown world catchphrase is coming from, this double speak. And this is what the narcissist relies heavily on, so nothing is at face value. It is the mask, a deceptive mask, which is what you're looking at. Now, if you want to be claimed, you want to be red pill, then this is an area for you to improve upon. Maybe it's a good idea for you to subscribe, because we'll be going into it in more depth. Because this way of dialogue, they try to palm it off in such a way that you won't stop to pause or question what you're hearing. You'll just take it as a positive or as a valid argument. So something like, I saw it with my own eyes. You just be like, so it must be true. I saw it with my own eyes, so it must be true. Or I felt it, so it must be true. And you'd be like, okay, all right, you say so. Because you stopped at this point. By now, you would have stopped bothering to actually have any integrity of your own, and you'll just go with the flow. You want to be conflict avoidant. You've seen them battle with other people, and you're thinking, I don't want to have that headache on my hands, so I'll just pacify. I will have that fawning response and be a people pleaser, and just they say it's true. Okay, we'll just join them. I'd rather be on their side than have them against me, even if though logically it's wrong. Like I'm saying, feelings, your self-preservation will override your critical thinking. And so the narcissist tries to corrode away your critical thinking and put you into a state of survival mode so that you will just do. Because it's a stupid thing to be, I saw it because it must be true. It's like, how many times have people, they believe the TV remote was by their side and somehow it ended up on the side table? Are you saying that the TV remote grew some legs and jumped up there? Of course not. You were mistaken. But they'll make you believe this because of their level of conviction. That pressure. It's like, no, I'm telling you, man, that TV remote magically ended up on the table. Like, Okay, boss. Okay, so all of this just basically shows us that something as simple and innocent as appearing as wanting to check for credentials is actually a big part, is a small part of a much bigger deception taking place, which then makes you wonder, what else have they been lying to you about? You know, how deep does this go, and for how long? You know, so if you have any doubts, look into them. Do not ignore them. Right? Do not expect the narcissist to save you. Save yourself. And with that, I pretty much I've said what I wanted to say about this credentials thing. Interesting, I thought, anyway. Hopefully it helps you. Maybe you might have conversations and find yourself being asked. Maybe they might not use the word credentials. Maybe they might say something else like "Who are you to tell me?" or something, or something along those lines. So thank you for your time. Hopefully it wasn't too long. Any questions or whatever, any anecdotal stories, feel free to leave in the chat. And see you all again soon. So have a good night.